So I've been asked already several times this morning, about my speaking experience and do I do this professionally. 6 weeks ago, I was one of you. And 6 weeks ago, I had been one of you for 35 years. I am not a professional speaker. 6 weeks ago, I was the Chief Consumer Experience Officer at Provide Commerce. I ran merchandising, marketing, creative, CRM, among a couple of other departments. So I am here as a peer today. I am talking to you about branding. This presentation is not a Madison Avenue brand presentation. I am not a Madison Avenue brand guy. This is about value propositions and value proposition as a critical component to your brand. That's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to talk to you about relevant examples within my experience and how I help companies, or how I plan to help companies going forward, put it into action. So what you're not going to see, any indicator of my new company or a brand for my new company, and it would be a very fair question for you guys to say, well, Greg, tell us about your value proposition and tell us about your brand. I just filed for my LLC this week. So I am going through that right now. I'm building my own set of brand assets like logos and taglines and value propositions, so I'm actually experiencing this. So I have a ton of slides, a ton. I have violated every speaker rule in the book. Okay? Here's what I want you to know. Do not try to drink in and absorb every word on every slide. I am going to fly through them because I want you to build a broad perspective. The slides that I really want you to walk away with something on, I will tell you. Okay? So, I am also, because I have so many slides, I have 4 takeaways that I'm going to give you before I even start. My scratched out 4 takeaways. What this presentation is about to have a strong brand, you need to have a strong, differentiated value proposition. Okay? You'll get another chance to see this later on in the presentation. But to build a very strong, differentiated value proposition, you've got to have consumer insight. You've got to have insight from your customers. The way that you get that insight from the customers, in my opinion, and what I'm going to talk to you about, is through primary qualitative and primary quantitative research. The reason that you do that research is you want to segment your audience. You're going to hear a lot today about targeting. That targeting is an example or an output of segmentation. Segmentation also does one other critical thing. It helps you understand the experience your target audience is after. Brands are no longer sets of attributes. Brand is experience. And we're going to talk today about things like customer journey mapping and why that's important. How is that linked to a brand and why? And so, the 4 things. Strong value proposition based in consumer insight derived from research. Research also informs the experience that target audience is looking for from your brand, your product, your service, your company. And here are some ideas about how to align your marketing investment to it. And then, not surprisingly, in some cases, a little bit, well, not really by accident, but the 3 speakers that you're going to hear in the breakouts, I cannot believe how well this dovetails. So I'm very pleased about that. Last word. So in my band, I play lead guitar. And I always get criticized because I stand still and play. Because I'm a very technical player, I love guitar. So they're always telling me to move around. And so if I move around too much and it becomes distracting, just give me the high sign and tell me to stop. Because I have to remind myself that you're not drinking beer and I am not playing Creedence at a dive bar in El Cajon. So. All right. What is a brand? Why do I need one? What do I do with one once I have one? How does a brand help me grow my business? All right, modern day branding really kind of exploded right after World War II. There was a proliferation of brands, and so you had the original madman guy, David Ogilvy, who basically said a brand is a collection of attributes, right? It's the packaging, it's the price, it's the history, it's the reputation, and it's ultimately the advertising campaign. Whoops. Well, let's fast forward to a guy named Seth Godin. I don't know how many of you follow Seth, but Seth says a brand is a set of expectations, memories, stories, and relationships. Huh? What? It's not a logo. It's not a tagline. It's a story. It's a relationship. Together, they account for a consumer's decision to choose one product over another, and if the consumer isn't paying a premium, then you don't have a strong brand. Wow. Sweeping change, and a different way that we all have to think about brands, their experiences. A lot of what you're going to see on these slides, I want you to really pick up on, is that brands are not just for companies, they're for people, they're for places, they're for things, and brand execution is very deliberate. We paint our airplanes mustard yellow. We don't hire employees, we hire cast members, and every weekend, regardless of the fact that I'm a very, very, very amateur golfer, I just do it and I become Tiger because I have a swoosh on my shirt, right? So what's the difference? You know, what does branding drive in us that makes us pay a premium for a standard white polo shirt, right? One of them is generic. One of them has a swoosh, and one of them has a polo pony. And because of that swoosh and that polo pony, we're going to pay a premium. Why? Is the shirt made any better? Guarantee you it's not. But why? And part of the reason is because it makes us feel a certain way. On Saturday, I could be Maverick in Top Gun, but on Sunday, I could be Arnold in The Terminator, just based on the pair of sunglasses that I'm wearing. Sunglasses are designed to prevent retina damage from UV rays. Why is design and brand so important? And the reason, well, let me make another point. Why do we drive extra miles and spend extra time in a place that sells a commodity? Why do we do that? And the answer, ladies and gentlemen, is right here. It's right here. We're all business people, and we're all trained to use this. And we're all trained to look at data and to make decisions derived from data sets and to make decisions derived from historical performance. And the problem is, to have a strong brand, you have to understand what's going on here. And you have to understand what's going on here with different groups of people, because what's going on here for me might not be what's going on here for you. It might not be what's going on here for you. That's where segmentation comes in. We'll get more to that. So nirvana for a brand occurs when what? Don't give me a cotton swab. Give me a slide presentation. Give me a Q-tip. Don't give me a clear plastic piece of adhesive. Give me a piece of Scotch tape. When your brand actually defines an entire category, your brand has kind of hit nirvana, right? So that's what we all strive for. But the problem is most of these brands that were up here, except for iPad probably, but a lot of these brands established that category dominance very early on. And now some of them are even struggling a little bit with disruption caused because of the consumer experience. So what distinguishes a brand? So I'm just going to hit this every slide in the whole presentation. You don't really have to read this. What you have to understand is the brand resides in the hearts and minds of its stakeholders, whether it's a consumer and whether it's a company. One other really important aspect of brand that you have to think about as a business leader: does your value proposition match the strategic intent of your business? And does your culture align to the strategic intent and the value proposition of your business? Those are questions I'm not going to answer today. Those are provocative thoughts that I want you to think about and take away, because cultural drive through the organization of a brand value proposition is a critical thing that you've got to have. All right. Here's an example. A brand is basically made up of a promise, a bundle of attributes, and a specific combination of logos, words, type, font, designs, and colors, right? So let's take a well-known brand. Some will say it's the flavor, but for millions, it's the way Coke makes them feel. Coke isn't about taste. What? Coke's about fun, freedom, and refreshment. So here's a brand that for 30 years, 40 years, a zillion years have written songs, and I'd like to teach the world to sing. It's a soft drink, right? But it's also a bundle of attributes. So we're going to talk a little bit later today also. You've heard things about CPG talk. The CPG marketing gurus come out and they talk about brand ladders, brand tenets, brand equities. How do these all stack up? Well, here's kind of an example. Brand specific attributes. So Coke relies on the fact that it has real cola taste and an unforgettable taste. Those are brand tenets. Everybody in Coke has to understand that whatever product they develop, it has to have that real taste, and it has to have an unforgettable taste. Revitalization gives me enjoyment, good to drink with family and friends, recognized as the best drink. But then there's intrinsic attributes in a brand. Refreshing, thirst quenching, high quality, worth what it costs. And it goes well with meals and snacks. Then there's the physical manifestation of all of this stuff. So this is where the creatives in the room really get going. How do you take all of these things and how do you bundle it up in a set of colors, in a brand tone, in a tenor, in a communication style, in a brand personality? Everything that Coke does, whether it's the silver can for Diet Coke with the D on it, or the actual scripting for their regular product, everything is done for a reason. So now, that reason is evolving though. This has been around forever, right? But what Coke is having to really understand how to do, as is every other brand, is we've got to morph this from a marketing campaign to understanding what the customer experience is. Why do people now want to drink energy drinks? Why do people now want to drink Red Bull and Monster? We're losing market share to some people like that, right? Coke, regular Coke, had caffeine in it. Some people used to have a Coke break at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? Some people maybe woke up after a bad hangover after listening to No. L7 play at a dive bar in El Cajon and had a Coke. But now they're getting disrupted. They're getting disrupted not necessarily by a new product, but they're getting disrupted by an experience that appeals to a new demographic called the millennial, right? So how do you think through that kind of stuff? All right, today's connected world, you guys have heard this a zillion times. I'm going to kind of blast through this. Your brand, you don't own your brand. Forget about it. You do not own your brand. Your customers own your brand through social media channels. And you're going to hear a lot today about LinkedIn, and you're going to hear a lot about the way that you should be thinking about social media. The other thing that we're confronted with is paradox of choice. You might not know this, and frankly, there's argument over this statistic that it might be higher. We are blasted, exposed to 3,500 brands a day. So there's a great book out there. I would encourage you to read it. It's called Paradox of Choice. And it talks about some choice is a good thing, but too much choice produces paralysis. So if you're a brand and you're trying to find where you play in a market or an industry, you're going to be confronted by the paradox of choice. So how do you attack this? How do you start thinking through it as a marketer? All right, I'm not going to hit on this one very hard because there's a better slide, but marketing investments go further when they're put behind a strong brand. All right, file that away for a minute. Marketing investments go further when they're put behind a strong brand. I'll come back and I'll show you why I think that's the case. All right, how do you know if now is the time for a holistic brand initiative, a brand investment, segmentation, customer journey mapping, agencies? Oh my God, Greg, it sounds expensive. Well, let's talk a little bit about the cost of not doing it, okay? So this is random. This is just something I put together, but it shows specific circumstances I've walked into in businesses. I took a job one time for a company that had just experienced explosive growth over a period of about 7-8 years. Great double-digit growth. However, and that's the blue line, right? They were doing a great job. A couple of acquisitions here and there, but just really taking and driving it. However, look at the red line. What was happening is year over year there was decelerating growth. Now the CEO kind of said, I think this brand, I think this company should be growing at 15% a year. Tell me what your plan is. And there was not one. And here is why there was not one. Because this growth was achieved through outstanding performance marketing investment and management at the ROI level, right? The customer, the target customer, had two attributes: pulse, wallet. That was the target. That was the market segmentation. And fantastic, outstanding growth and outstanding growth pattern. The financial people in the room love the blue bars. The CEOs, understandably, should be concerned about the red track. How do I get back up to, sustained double-digit growth year over year? The brand value proposition is likely not resonating with the target audience that provides the business the greatest opportunity for lifetime value going forward. Whoo, boy, that's a mouthful, right? So one other part of segmentation. Yes, it defines the variables and the attributes of customers. It helps you understand why you think differently about a brand. It helps you understand what motivates this person as opposed to that person. But the other important thing about segmentation and why you can't ignore the need for an investment in it is because it helps you understand the greatest segments that will provide the long-term potential to your business over time going forward. You have to think about that. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So to be clear, brand strategy is not the same as brand marketing. Brand strategy is strategic, it's built around the customer, as brand marketing is a little bit more of tactical and it's part of a brand program. So common approaches, how do you develop a brand strategy, Greg? Well, here's a couple of approaches that are probably used that aren't necessarily going to work in the long term. The CMO might have a vision in the night, right? Has anybody experienced that one? I've probably had a vision or two in the middle of the night as a brand manager for companies. We've conducted focus groups. Awesome, great job. Primary qualitative research, excellent. The problem is we conducted them with customers, people who are already our customers. Okay, I could probably make an argument that I could have spent less and done some RFM segmentation, which if you don't know what that is, there's a slide coming up. But I probably could have done some RFM segmentation or some third-party data overlays or stuff like that instead of doing focus groups with customers. Focus groups are awesome. Do focus groups with non-customers and find out why they're not customers. Then do focus groups with customers. An agency has a vision in the night. Trust me, folks, I ran an agency. Part of the agency thing is a vision in the night. I mean, sometimes, you guys have all watched Mad Men, Don comes up with a great idea, after 2 martinis at lunch. It happens that way sometimes, but it can be hit or miss. And then finally, there's mimicry. Let's do what this brand is doing because it seems to be working for them. The problem is that is not a customer-centric approach. All right, this is a money slide. Pay very close attention to this slide. This is the high-level steps that I want to talk to you about today. How many people are familiar with the acronym POST, coined by Forrester? Do you know what POST stands for in terms of a planning methodology? POST, people, objectives, strategy, tactics. POST, people, objective, strategy, tactics. Do not go to strategy until you understand people and objectives. Do not go to strategy and tactics until you understand your customer and what their objectives are. And do not go to strategy until you understand your internal stakeholders, your internal people, and what their objectives are. Then formulate a strategy, then go to activation. What I'm going to be talking about today are basically these 6 steps in the first 2 stages. Step 1, know your customer, the people part. Deploy segmentation, do persona development. Does everybody know who does not know what a persona is? You're lying. So there's 2 things that come out of segmentation. There becomes segment profiles, which I'm going to show you, which are demographics, psychographics, household income level. Those are profiles. Percentage male, percentage female, average age, average kids in the house, et cetera, et cetera. Those are profiles worth their weight in gold. The problem is you don't market to data. You market to people. The data has to be personified. You have to create personas. I have gone to people's houses with video crews, sit down in their living room, and ask them for 3 hours why they shop the way they do. We ask permission to videotape the pictures on their walls. We ask permission to videotape the trinkets on their fireplace mantles. These are ethnographies. They form personas. You've got to do personas. Personas inform your marketing team, your creative team. They create people out of data. So persona development is very important. Then when you have the personas, guess what? You bring them all into a room and you do journey mapping. And journey mapping is critical because it shows that customer's journey or the potential customer's journey with your brand through every touch point. I have brought people into a room and say, you got to buy a gift for someone in your family. And it was just as awkward as that. They're looking at me like, what do you mean? And so I say, what do you do? And then another 2 minutes of silence. They say, well, I go to a search engine. Okay, great. Write it down, put a Post-it note on the wall. Then what do you do? Why do you go to a search engine? Which search engine? What do you look for on SERPs? What about the SERPs make you respond? Why do you click through? You map every one of those questions all the way through to the final email that says thank you for your purchase and how that makes the customer feel. That's customer journey mapping. I'll talk to you a little bit more about it, but I would love to talk with you about it further if you have any questions. And if we have time afterwards, I'll try to take them. But if not, I'll be around. Look me up. OK. Also, clear value propositions, brand architecture, and brand expression. We've kind of talked about those. So I'm talking to you today about the first 2/3. Doug, Jonathan. David. Sorry. Are talking to you about the last third. The reason that I mind blanked on that one, so all my friends saw the flyer, and they looked at David Steele and Doug McQueen, and they all wrote me on Facebook and said, dude, you got to change your name. You need a more powerful name, you know. So I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Those are cool names. So anyway, sorry. OK, I talked about, there are lots of types of segmentation. RFM, we talked about RFM segmentation. This is just an example. But RFM segmentation stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. If you have 100 customers on your house database, and out of those 100 customers, 10 of them bought 2 times in the last 6 months, and they've also bought 3 times in the last 12 months, and they spend $200, and then you've got another 10 customers on your file that have bought once in the last year, and they spend $50, that's RFM segmentation and scoring. Recency, frequency, monetary value. It's great. You have to do it. I've been doing it all my life as a direct marketer. The problem, and it's not really a problem, I'm gonna retract that. RFM looks this way. Okay? It looks back at your house file, and you're segmenting customers and data. So there are many types of segmentation. Attitudinal and behavioral segmentation is derived from primary, these are like really cool sounding words, primary quantitative research and primary qualitative research. What that means is you're delivering quantitative, you're delivering a survey directly to a potential customer. Qualitative, you're interviewing directly a potential customer, right? So attitudinal and behavioral segmentation is what I am talking to you about today. It's got to be combined with other forms of segmentation. All right, and it looks kind of a different way. It looks this way from your RFM. Okay, money slide. Take the time to just record these points. This is what I talked about to start. If you walk away with nothing else from my presentation today, because I know I'm blowing you away with a lot of stuff, primary segmentation research provides the insights you need to formulate strategic guidance, and that is what helps you build a differentiated value proposition. So as you think about launching a new product, launching a new service, launching a new brand, and the investments required, this is something that you've got to think about. So the insights gained define the experience, and they define new products, marketing investment, communication, sales strategies, et cetera, et cetera. That is my platform. Now, this one's a killer. Why segmentation research? I don't expect, as a matter of fact, this is the one that violates like every presentation rule. Segmentation will give you a comprehensive understanding of current and potential customers. That's why you got to do it. It will give you meaningful and actionable segmentation, financially optimal segmentation. How much does this person spend in this given market? It might be electronics retailing, it might be gifting, it might be personal care, it might be health care. A lot of this stuff right now So how is this stuff being used? I'm going to stop real quick. A lot of ways that this approach is being used are in industries that are being disrupted. So think about that for a minute. That sounds like a fancy schmancy word. Think about the healthcare industry and Obamacare. Think about if you are an executive, think about if you're a CMO for a medical health plan in a state that now has an exchange. And think about the fact that any minute now, Amazon could get in the game and start selling health plans on AmazonHealth.com, right? You've been heads down. You went to medical school, and then you got your marketing, emphasis in your MBA, and you're now the CMO for a major healthcare organization. But suddenly, you need to start thinking like this Chapman guy. What? We're not retailers. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Your industry is getting disrupted. Think about what Airbnb is doing to the accommodation industry. Think about what Uber is doing to the transportation industry. Have anybody in here familiar with High Oscar? Tell me if you've ever heard of High Oscar. You're familiar with High Oscar?
I heard of it.
Okay, you've heard of it.
I don't know what it is.
Write down www.highoscar, HIOSCAR.com. You don't have to look, please don't look at it right now. Look at High Oscar in terms of disrupting the healthcare industry. Why is that happening? High Oscar is the Uber of the healthcare industry right now. So, okay, so you've got to get a perspective on how millennials are going to think about that. You've got to get a perspective on how boomers are going to think about that. You've got to get a perspective about how Gen X and Gen Y is going to think about that. Segmentation helps you do that. So I'm going to kind of blast through here because a lot of it is repetitive. Attributes and benefits, customer perceptions of your brand and competing brands. That's one also very important and valuable thing about segmentation. Don't just ask them about your brand. Ask them about other brands they shop and why so that you can do a comparison. All right. Personas. This is for the propeller heads. Check your email. I'm going to spend 20 seconds on this slide. This is basically the steps that you go through in market segmentation. You create hundreds of variables around attributes and that type of thing. Test those variables to see which one pop as predictive outcomes for the brand. Find out the key attitudes, needs, demos, and behaviors, and then optimize for a solution. This is kind of what segmentation, the process that you would go through. Don't worry about this one, it's there. Now, here's what segmentation looks like. This was a healthcare segmentation. I've cleansed it a little bit. I've cleansed the brand information, and therefore it took some of the information away, but this is the point I want to bring up. 25, 28, 22, 25%. They did a segmentation and they found that the universe was almost equally distributed quarter, 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 quarter. Now good. I do that when I sing too. Most healthcare organizations want to market to everybody. Who's your target market? Oh, anybody who gets sick, anybody who gets hurt, anybody who wants to do preventative health care. Really? How do you optimize your marketing ROI? Well, we optimize it at the performance marketing level, and I have an agency who watches that for me. Okay. So we've done our segmentation, we've built our segment profiles. From these segment profiles, we're going to take these and we're going to build personas, which are similar type cards, but basically just a bunch of writing that says, this loyal local, his name is Steve. And what we're going to do with Steve is we're going to sit on his couch with him and talk to him. We're going to understand what kind of car he drives. We're going to understand what kind of magazines he reads. We're going to understand his favorite radio and TV shows. We're going to understand what motivates him to do that, how he interacts with media, and we're going to write a persona. But here's where the rubber starts hitting the road with market segmentation. So percentage likely to purchase or interact with the brand, product, or service. Well, it was a quarter, quarter, quarter. However, look how the segments stack up in terms of financial opportunity. Right? It's really not a quarter, quarter, quarter. Guess what? Your acquisition opportunity is only with two of the segments. One of the segments turns out through segmentation to only really be a retention opportunity. You shouldn't be spending performance marketing dollars in acquisition for that particular segment. And guess what? Mr. or Miss, I want to market to everybody because everybody gets sick. Negative. Forget that segment. It's a lost cause. In terms of marketing investment, and how you're going to spend marketing dollars. Now, some of you will argue with me on that, and you should. Let's talk about developing the value proposition. I'm going to spend a couple minutes on this slide. This is my own model. So if there's anything proprietary in here, I kind of put this together and I've used it with varying degrees of success, mostly good. But this is kind of the steps that you need to go through to ask yourself, do I have a viable differentiated value proposition for my business? Or you can use this for yourself personally. This is kind of what I'm doing right now, this exercise I'm going through for the Pocket CMO, the business that I'm actually launching, right in the middle of launching. I'm going through the same process. So the first thing that you want to do is say, for my primary and secondary target, so let's say you've done personas and they're Steve and Diane. So you're going to make a sentence that says, for Steve and Diane, who are trying to accomplish what? So post, people who have an objective. So for Steve and Diane, who are trying to accomplish this, my brand, my product, my service is a what? Place, solution, resource, destination. Answer the question. What is your brand to your primary and secondary segments that are trying to accomplish what? That does what? How does it help? How does it solve Steve and Diane's problem? Unlike my competitors. So you always hear about it's got to fit on a t-shirt. This is kind of how you sort of in your mind get to that. Can you develop a differentiated value proposition that fits on a t-shirt? This is my approach. Your brand delivers what? So for primary, secondary target segments who are trying to accomplish something, your brand is a solution that does this better than them and delivers this. That is your brand promise. This is my step to building a differentiated value proposition. This is a college course. I've got 10 more minutes. We could spend all day on this. We could spend all week on this. We could spend a semester talking about this stuff. It's very fascinating. But this is a very interesting approach. Think about this as you hear about your LinkedIn profile later today, as you think about your own personal brand, as you think about your brand as a leader in your organization. Think about that sentence and could you complete that? Then think about it for your business. All right, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because this gets into the Madison Avenue stuff. I just want to give you some thought starters around how this is constructed. So you have a brand idea, which is your reason for existence, your general orientation or view of the world. As you think about this as business leaders, the reason that I bring this slide up is not because I want to make you Madison Avenue marketers and understand brand ladders. Think about this. As I show you this and you see the print populate this slide, does your mission, vision, and value statement for your company match what I'm showing you? If it doesn't, you probably have misalignment in your organization around your differentiated value proposition. So there's another thought to worry about. I'm giving you more to, you guys are going to walk away going, God, I wish I didn't listen to this guy. I got 10,000 more things to do than I thought I did. Brand positioning. The unique value that your brand provides to the target within the market, the reason to buy in your promise. Brand pillars. Now this kind of gets to, the foundation. Coke, real cola taste. Do not do anything with a new product. Do not bring a product development idea into my office if it doesn't lead with real cola taste. That is a tenet, that is a pillar of my brand. The core tenets that drive how you execute your business. The brand personality, the creatives in the room love this one. I've got to develop a logo that resonates with the persona that was derived from the segment profile. It's got to be this particular RGB color or this particular shade, and it's got to be in this font because that's the personality of our brand. Don't ignore that. I'm making light of it. Don't ignore it. It's critical. But make sure that when you challenge a creative agency or a creative team to come up with this, it's grounded in consumer insight. Make sure that the steps are in place to say, hey, customer, should this be cursive or sans serif? Hey, non-customer, should this be cursive or sans serif? And understand why each one said what they said. Brand equities are the fundamental attributes. So we kind of talked about that. I apologize, Logan, I did not talk to you about how we're going to follow up with this information, but you'll be able to link some of these back with what I'll send in to you after. Yeah.
And this all of this will be on innovatethought.com.
Okay. All right, here we are, the customer journey map. So there's a lot of these out there. Just Google customer journey map. There's a lot of them out there. About 5 years ago, it was the cool thing to do. Honestly, I stripped this one right off the internet. I have several journey maps. They all have proprietary information on them. I would love to have shown them to you, but it's just not something I'm comfortable doing. This is a customer journey map. It's a pretty good one. Let me give you a case study. If you want to understand, several years ago, Lego turned around their business using customer journey mapping. What they did, they actually brought a bunch of moms and a bunch of kids into a room and said, okay, kid, you got a set of Legos for Christmas. What do you do with them? Well, I play with them. For how long? A couple weeks. Then where do they go? Well, under the bed. And Lego kind of took that on and said, hey mom, what could we give you to get the Lego set out from under the bed, to get the kid playing with it again, and to actually add on another Lego kit? Oh, okay. Look it up. I won't go into great detail on it, but there's a case study somewhere out there. I've read through it a couple of different times. It's old now, but it's a great example in my opinion. Here's what customer journey mapping does, all right? It is a sequence all the way through every interaction and touch point with your brand. The way that I got introduced to customer journey mapping was through web development, which is, so now, you know, CMOs are so challenged. It's no longer a marketing degree or you know, X number of years of experience in CPG marketing. Now you've got to, if you're a CMO, you've got to understand technology. What? You've got to understand UX, front-end design. What? How? Whoa. I've got $100 million in marketing investment that I'm responsible for. I have to learn about responsive design? Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. And here's why. Your customers will tell you why it's important. Your customers will tell you from every interaction point on the customer journey map why they do what they do, and it's critical that you do this. So I did this at Provide. Everything that I am showing you, I did at Provide. And again, I'm a little sensitive when I present to give proprietary information, but I will tell you this. I was responsible for 7 brands. I'll give you a case study on 2 of the brands. This last year, our website storefronts were up over 20% and just under 20% respectively as a direct result of this. Also, NPS, does anybody know Net Promoter Score? Are you guys familiar with Net Promoter Score? NPS. If you're into consumer experience and you want to understand how good of a job you are doing, consider NPS as a metric, as a component of your dashboard or your scorecard. NPS is simply an indicator of how likely your customers are to refer your brand to a friend of theirs. Net Promoter Score. It's fascinating. Results from customer journey mapping, we had off-the-chart record success growth in Net Promoter Score. The reason? We were doing what the customers told us. We were emailing them when and what they wanted. We were interacting with them on mobile based on their insights rather than our assumptions and our opinions. We were understanding the customer journey. We were understanding what they wanted in the box when they received it. So don't overlook customer journey mapping. Go educate yourself about it. I am happy to talk with you about it in further detail. It is such an excellent tool, and it's derived from personas. So you've got to get the people in the room and at the table. So you do your segmentation, you develop a segment profile, you then personify that profile, turn them into a real person, and then go find those people. There are companies that can help do that. Experian, Axiom, Equifax, FICO. A lot of people can do overlays with your segmentation and then help you go out into the real world and find real customers. You invite them in. There's a research company in town called Luth that can help do this. There's a great company called Bovitz who can help do this. There's a brand new fledgling company called the Pocket CMO that can give you guidance on how to do some of this. Anyway, customer journey mapping. What are you looking for? Remember Procter & Gamble, they became famous in marketing circles for 2 things, the first moment of truth and the second moment of truth. And I apologize, I forgot the guy's name. I'm not doing good. I think his first name was David, so I'm not doing very good with Davids today. He said, we have 2 moments of truth with the consumer. Moment of truth number 1 is when she sees our detergent on the store shelf and decides to buy it. Moment of truth number 2 is when she takes the t-shirts and the towels and everything out of the washing machine and they're white. Those are the 2 moments of truth. Google has a guy named Jim Lisinski, who I think is a really smart guy, a really brilliant guy. He wrote a book called The 0 Moment of Truth. And the 0 Moment of Truth is about digital and about how in omni-channel now, let's take this out of brick and mortar, let's take this out of the retail experience of I see detergent, I use detergent. Let's take this back to the 0 moment of truth, which is, are you making the consideration set? That's the 0 moment of truth. Great book, great understanding, lots of ties to Google and the way that they approach their thought. You're going to hear a lot more about that from Doug later today. I'm going to skip this slide. Let's just say that brand anchors everything that you do at every level in your company around how you execute. So, all right, we're doing okay. I'm going to maybe land about 3 or 4 minutes later than I want. All right, so we're all familiar with funnels. We're all familiar with marketing approaches. This is what I want you to think about when you hear the breakout sessions later today as well. I generally call these stages, these are my words, found, considered, purchased, and coveted. You want your brand found. You want your brand considered. You definitely want your brand purchased. But after the purchase, you want your brand coveted by the customer. Also, you also want to covet your retained customer. But this is from the customer perspective. So the important thing about branding and about thinking about your investment in branding is it has to occur. It has to occur at every stage of the funnel. It has to occur at every stage of the funnel. The hardest conversations I had in my career was with the CFO and the CEO talking to them about soft ROI at the top of the funnel. The absolute most difficult conversations I've had, and absolutely one of the most critical. It's got to happen. Because performance marketing, and this is the perspective that most companies have, tends to occur around the end of the considered stage and at the purchased and coveted stage. So what does that look like? So for those of you that can't read, so primary and secondary markets who are thinking about purchasing or have encountered a stimulus or a trigger, who are actively looking to make a purchase, or who've purchased once. So honestly, traditional marketing funnel, right? I even designed it that way to make it look that way, like a funnel. Found, considered, purchased, coveted. The problem with most companies is this is what their marketing investment strategy looks like in digital. This is primarily a digital. This does not take into account traditional. So I'm not talking about TV. I'm not talking about radio, that kind of stuff. What I'm primarily talking about is digital. And you're going to hear a hell of a lot more about this from Doug. And he's got a hell of a lot more expertise about it than I do. But the problem is this is the way most companies approach their marketing investment. Why? That right there is where the hard ROI is. Right? You have no problem having a conversation with your CFO or your CEO about the ROMI, the return on marketing investment, that occurred here because I spent money and I got an action for it. Right? That's great, but this is the way it should look. Now, each one of these, I know these are hard to read, but basically this is affiliate marketing, display marketing, PPC marketing, SEO marketing, YouTube, social marketing, email marketing. I want to back up for a minute. The reason I put social up here is guess what happens? How many times have you guys heard a CEO or a CMO or somebody else in business say, oh, I got to have a social strategy. Oh, I carved out $150,000 for this agency because I got to have a social strategy. Really? Why? Well, my CEO says it's important that we have a social strategy. Or I see all this going on, so I feel like I got to have a social strategy. So this kind of becomes an outlier up here at the top of the funnel, and you do some Facebook stuff, and you do some Google Plus stuff, and you do some YouTube stuff or whatever, but that's not really a strategy. It's got to be aligned with a content strategy, and that content has to resonate with your segments. Okay? So it needs to look like this. All right. KPIs. This is the last slide. So we're doing okay. KPIs, they're very important. Now, I'm going to qualify this slide by saying one thing. The big buzzword right now, for those of you that are in the digital circles, it's not right now. The big buzzword that's been around for the last 18 months with regard to social is attribution, right? I don't know if any of you run into this, but right now in digital marketing, and frankly in all marketing, it's not just digital, you've got an attribution problem. And that gets back to the soft ROI versus the hard ROI. And that gets back to the fact that you have got to market your brand from the top of the funnel all the way through. And the reason is, so remember that slide with the red mark and all the little dots on it that said marketing a strong brand returns a better ROI on your marketing investment? Here is why. I'm going to back up real quick. If you just do this, eventually your business is going to look like the slide with the blue bars and the red line. Competitors are going to nip at your heels. Competitors are going to disrupt the marketplace. There's going to be a new generation of consumers enter the marketplace with a big wallet. If you just do this, your business at some point is going to look like the blue bars with the red line. You're going to get a decel in your trajectory. You've got to do this. And attribution sort of gets to, well, I'm spending X way up at the top of the funnel on social media. What is it doing for me? I'll tell you what it does for you. I'll tell you what ultimately it does for you. It makes your ROI here more efficient. Your marketing dollars have to work less hard. Your marketing dollars don't have to work so hard at the kind of the moments of truth. The problem with this strategy right here is your marketing dollars have to work really hard at the moments of truth. Here, what you're doing is hedging your bet on your performance marketing with brand marketing. So, your ROI, your KPIs, interactions, brand awareness, new visits, click-throughs at the consideration stage, assisted visits, direct site load, conversion, AOV, and ROMI at the purchase stage. And then down here, don't ignore brand sentiment. The way that your brand gets coveted, if I love your brand and I tell 3 of my friends that I covet your brand, they're likely to become acquisition targets for you, right? So don't ignore brand sentiment. Measure it in social media, understand it, understand the comments that are being made in social media. There are tools out there to do that. Salesforce, there's like 3 or 4 different ones, but there are tools out there to understand brand sentiment. And then repeat purchase and lifetime value, those are kind of standard metrics. So I've thrown a tremendous amount at you. And what you guys have to do is expose yourselves, keep calm, and build your brand. So I would love to answer questions, but I'm kind of at the limit of my time. I'm available, I'm around today. It's fascinating material. I would love to talk with you further about it. Thank you very much for your time.